and welcome to Bolton. I'm Joyce Stilley, the Administrative Officer for the Town of Bolton, and this is a live show done the first and the third Tuesdays of each month from 10:30 to 11 a.m. The show is rebroadcast on the second and fourth Tuesdays at the same time. The show is a continuing effort to promote open communications within the community, and if you have any groups, upcoming events, topics you would just like to see us talk about, please contact me at the Town Hall and we will try to get that information on the air. Today, we're moving closer and closer into that final budget part of the season, and so my guest is Bob Moore, First Selectman, who's also the co-host, or I'm not sure.
Whatever, the fill-in.
The fill-in host, that Bob has done several of these shows, but this year is perhaps, we're going to talk about the budget, but you can't talk about the budget unless you talk about the revaluation process.
Right, and every time you have a reval, which is every 5 years, it just changes the base in which you work with as far as the mill rate that we're working with. And this year, it's complicated even further because what has happened, the grand list is actually lower than it was 5 years ago. And it really has to do with just property values, not that businesses have moved out of town or anything else. We've actually had growth during that period, but it is what the real estate value is of these properties today versus 5 years ago. So what does that really mean as far as mill rate? Well, last year, we had our total expenditures were $19,430,000 in change. So to do that, we used a mill rate of 30.98. Well, the revaluation basically dropped our total grand list by just over 12%. So what that means is simply this, that to generate the same $19,430,000, the mill rate now is 34.69%. That's without a penny increase in expenditures or any other expenditures on the town side. That's just to balance it out. Now, most people in their, when you received your notices and revaluation, you obviously were aware that there were reductions. And the reductions for most properties. And the reductions varied because it depended upon the varying type of properties. Some might have been 2 and 3%, some might have been up to 15%. It was a significant variance, but when it's all said and done, the average was 12, just a hair over 12%. So we start off with this rather confusing element in the budget process. Now, if anyone watching still has that sheet of paper that you received with the new assessment, if you were to take the 34.69 in mill rate and multiply it times your assessment, you'll be able to get what it should come out within a few pennies or close to what you paid in taxes the previous year. It'll vary from household to household. Now, we go into our real budget process, and Here we are, where we are looking to now pass a budget. Well, we submitted on the town side, Joyce, an increase of
$249,149 increase in the general government budget.
Right.
And that went to the Board of Finance as well as the Board of Eds and Debt and Capital. And the Board of Finance last week set the budget then for public hearing on April 10th at Bolton Center School.
So the increase,
or Bolton High School, excuse me.
So the increases the request would have been for $20,241,320. after a lot of discussion, and the Board of Finance had moved forward with significant reductions. On the town side, the reductions meant that instead of the $240 some odd thousand increase, that was reduced to $71,000.
That's right.
And that's a significant.
We were cut $178,000
Right.
in this proposal.
And that's a significant reduction. And perhaps we can just talk about some of its impacts on that.
Well, and key for people to understand is what was in the budget proposal was key elements. We had the plan of conservation and development at almost $50,000. And that really covers the cost of contracting out for services, help
Right.
with it, and additional staff time. And that is required by state statute that we do that every 10 years. The result on the other side, if we don't comply with that, is the state can withhold grant monies, all grant monies from us.
Right.
So it's not something that we can just say, well, we're going to postpone it. We need to move forward with it. We talked about employee fringe benefits. We have a $63,000 increase there. You know, our health insurance premium is up 11.8. We started out at 24%, and we're able to get it down to 11.8, and we're still working on hopefully some other changes. But, you know, it still is a significant increase for us. We also, you know, with the Board of Ed and town together, we're going to self-insure our dental for next year, just to produce a little bit of savings cost to us.
And on a budget this size, it's a very small savings, but quite frankly, when we're dealing with these type of reductions and limitations of what we can increase our budgets, every little bit helps. And,
right.
and then these are the little things that we are dealing with now going forward. And just to follow your line of thought on that, the other increase that we have in there is our normal increases in personnel cost.
Correct.
And that was just a little over $61,000. Now, if you just take
And within there's a couple of
Right.
changes. We are, you know, the fire department officers, they're volunteers, but they have a lot of requirements and a lot of things they have to live up to.
that go far beyond anything that was around
Yes.
just 10 years ago.
Yes, and so the Board of Selectmen had submitted a step-up system for some of those officers, and this is the third year of that. And we also have a $17,500 increase for our building official, but we're bringing in over $21,000 on the revenue side to cover that. That
Right.
basically we are working
Right.
just as we do within our own town and with other towns to do things regionally, and we're providing building official services to the town of Wellington.
Right. And for that, we're basically contracting the service to the town. But we have to show that expenditure in our budget, even though we have a revenue that exceeds the expenditure.
Yes.
It still
Yes.
has to show that. That was part of our increase. So that's, and again, that's a pretty significant number to contend with.
Well, yes, and if you look at just the two contracted between the health insurance and the wages, that's over $120,000
Right.
between those two, and we receive an increase of 71.
Right. So basically what that tells you is just to meet our obligations, other areas of the budget will basically have to be reduced. So,
Yes.
so that the other areas of our budget would be reduced to a level lower than what they currently are. That's literally the only way to do it, based on the current structure.
And we have some other increases.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
we haven't
for
hit-
the
right,
for
we
the
haven't hit all of them.
troopers, which again, those costs are set by the state and passed down to us for
Yep.
our 2 resident troopers, 70%. You know, that's 12,000. We have software contracts. That's a $3,000 increase. We have a 10,000, almost 11,000 increase in the refuse. And, you know, we have also worked on trying to increase the road repairs budget just because every year we're trying to pull money from capital and get it into the operating budget so that we don't fall behind on capital projects.
Yeah, and again, it just makes it extremely difficult. And, you know, those items, I mean, they total almost I'd say 85% of our requested increase. So within our increases, there was obviously a very, very small amount of dollars to our normal operating side of the budget. And quite frankly, I mean, our requests were a bit higher than folks came in from our departments, but the point is that our department heads realized the situation we're in, and they kept it down as best they could. Our board actually lowered it even further, and now we're in a position we're going to have to significantly lower it. So just to give you a sense of what this means, on the school board side, I'm not sure what the reduction was on that. It was significant. 457,000. So just look, so what does that mean in comparing last year to this year in dollars? Last year it was 19,430,000 roughly. The request this year is 19,706,300 and change. That's after the reductions from the Board of Finance, and this is what's going forward to the hearing. So that's an expenditure increase of 2.98%, and that's what's going forward. We are our board, and I'm sure the Board of Ed will have to figure out how to do this, and there are different ways to address these issues. One of the ways that our board is discussing and looking to do with cooperation with all our department heads is to sit down and go over our existing budgets right now, where we are in expenditures, and if there's anything that we can hold off and not do or save, is put that aside as a surplus and have that available to be turned back to the town as an offset to one of our cuts. Because quite frankly, we need to be able to have our budget level at least cover our personnel cost.
Right.
And that's what we'll be looking to do. And what does that mean as far as to the taxpayer? I mean, that amount as far as the amount needed for taxes doesn't change.
Correct.
And that's always been our goal, to try and do that. And it's difficult. You know, we've had years in which we've had some significant surpluses, but that's simply because we took a year where we have a lot of storms. We spent money on the storms, but we did receive large amounts back from FEMA that we were able to turn back to the town. Well, this case is not true this year. We had a tough winter. We spent the majority of our budget this winter. I mean, we were exceedingly thankful and grateful that we did not have snowstorms other than yesterday in the month of March. That one was one of those like, okay, you think it's over, it's not. But that helped us a lot. So it really gave us an opportunity. And quite frankly, we couldn't bank on where we're going to be until we were able to make it through this winter time period. We're now in a position to, okay, let's see where we are.
And on the other side, because of all the storms, both the Highway and Buildings and Grounds Department were very limited in other projects they could accomplish this year that they had planned on accomplishing. So while we might have had to, which we did have to spend more on sand and salt and things such as that, even overtime, there's some offset because of projects they couldn't do.
Right. Normally during our winter, during the winter time frame, both Buildings and Grounds and Highways are still out doing projects, construction and projects, fall and early spring, which the winter simply didn't allow us to do. Well, there's only a certain time frame that you can do this, and we have other works. So these are, again, as you state, these are projects that, okay, we had set monies aside, so we're going to have to look and see what we can return back from those. So that's what we're doing.
And the other side of what the Board of Selectmen will be looking at is the capital, because the grand list went down, that 1 mil base requirement went down. The Board of Selectmen had put more than the 1 mil in initially, just because capital is decreasing. And we'll have to look at, are there some things that perhaps we can take out of capital, lower capital even further, and possibly purchase this year.
Right.
You know, last year we wound up hit with debt service. We had to put 140 in capital. At this point, we're at 87. You know, do we need to try to adjust that?
Right, those are...
Bottom line is, this is a tough number to endure. And besides all of these trying to work around it, it is going to impact perhaps Indian Notch Park, perhaps the library with, you know, what can they purchase during the year.
Right.
It's going to impact seniors as to what's available for chore assistance and vans. It's going to impact, you know, so many different things that the town has now as services.
What we do, quite frankly, anytime we've been in these situations, and time we've been in these situations, what we try and do, if not to utilize a term that, you know, is not meaningful, but we try and spread the pain throughout various budget. We do not feel it's proper to just say, okay, we're going to hit this budget and then deal with it. I mean, everyone, we're all a part of it, and everyone gets take a piece of the hit, if you will. Within that, though, we have always made an effort, and I think an exceptional effort, to make sure that we provide the needed services. And we start off with that as our goal, and then work down. And I know it varies from folks to folks as to what's needed and what's not quite so needed. Right. All the services are needed in some sense, but if we can perhaps modify things a bit just to make it work within our budget process, we're going to have to do that. And I don't think, looking forward, I mean, right now we're looking at just at perhaps if we can work out an arrangement, get our budget up to maybe 120,000. That's what hopefully we'll go to referendum with. And it's always a concern on our part, just because of our history, that may not make it.
Right.
And then we'll be asked to make another reduction. So it's you're starting off with a painful situation. It could well be even a more difficult situation.
Yes.
So those are the dilemmas we face. It's not fun,
no.
but it is, as we say, it is the reality of where we are, fiscally. It's where we are. And on the I think on the taxpayer side, I think one of the things that everyone should look at, this simply reflects a 2.98% increase. It's not a significant increase in expenditures. I think both, certainly on our side of the budget, we have made a concerted effort to keep our expenditures down. And in looking at the school board budget, well, what's going forward is that's a tight budget. I mean, it's no one says it's an easy budget, but it's going to be a tight budget, and like the rest of us, everyone's going to have to make adjustments. And
yes, and
it's not easy.
The selectmen made reductions before they sent their budget forward, trying to keep it as low as possible. We've identified the majority of these increases aren't things we can necessarily just talk about.
Right.
I mean, if they all continue to need to go forward, which we don't see much signs otherwise, there's got to be reductions elsewhere.
Right.
And we should talk about the process. The public hearing is at the high school at 7 p.m. on April 10th. After that public hearing, it's the Board of Finance that holds the public hearing. They will take comments from the public hearing, and then we'll set the budget for referendum. And the referendum is the first Tuesday in May.
In May.
And what that means is they could increase it from what goes to public hearing. They could decrease it further from what went to public hearing, and they could keep it the same.
Right.
We have no power or say
no.
on that, but
The public does.
The public does, and at the Board of Finance meeting last week, it was, while it was a majority vote, it was a split vote on
Right.
sending this forward. So, you know, there is different points of view on the budget within the Board of Finance, but certainly it's going to be the public that has the impact.
Right. As always, as it should be. I mean, it's the taxpayer who basically bears the burden of supporting the budget. So it's important that the impact and input is there. And it's, you know, I can fully understand on both sides of the issue where everyone is. I can understand the Board of Finance trying to keep that increase down. I mean, even in their discussions at the board, those who didn't want to go to the 2.98, their increases were only marginally higher than that. So,
Right.
I mean, it's not, I don't think any of the board members were in favor of any significant increase. They understand the issues. But it's a matter of what's it going to take to, one, pass a budget, two, keep town operation going and keep the school board budget fully functioning. It's a tough row to hoe. It's a difficult situation. But as you stated, one of the most important impacts is public input. And that's always an issue, and for the Board of Finances, for us, is trying to gauge, all right, what is the public mindset? What are you willing to accept? What are you willing to move forward with? So that meeting is quite critical.
Well, and people may think it's all on the expenditure side. It's all on the expenditure side. No, it's not. It's basically our revenues are down
Right.
from last year to help offset the taxes. We're down just a little over about $150,000
Right, and that's
in revenue.
so that's not you're right. That's not as if something left the town that we don't have, but these are one-time revenues that have come in, and they don't appear the next year.
You know, grants from the
Right.
state have not significantly increased. They basically remained level.
Right.
You know, the other items that we collect, whether it's fees for land use or chore assistance, or, you know, we've received the FEMA money in the
Right.
past.
Not there.
It's all down
Right.
about 150,000.
So,
or
right.
we would not be looking at this level of cuts, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. Even if we were at exactly the same as we were last year, we'd start off in a deficit position of $150,000. So that complicates the issue even further. So it's a difficult year, but like everything else, we will plod through it. Maybe we won't be particularly pleased with the end result, but that's our process. And again, I think I go back to it. It is quite important for our residents, our taxpayers, to submit their input to Board of Finance, whatever it is. I mean,
Yes.
You know, quite frankly, as much as I would, you know, feel we really submitted an honest and sincere budget, bottom line is, when it comes to the budget referendum, it is the voter who makes the final decision. So it's important that everyone has an understanding where that mine is. And it's important for us to try and explain why our budgets are what they
Yes.
are.
And we should talk over the next month. We'll be looking to set up some different times if people have questions about what happens
Right.
with the, because of revaluations, that Bob and I will look to set up a daytime and evening and hopefully a
and a
Saturday
for-
weekend
right,
meeting.
where you can come in and bring your assessment, and we can really actually do the math for you, explain to you what the impact is as it, as it now stands or as it would
Right.
stand at that time. And that to try and at least make it easier for you when you go to the polls as to what this all means. We're happy to do this because it's difficult enough to understand the change just because of reval.
Correct.
And then you add the budget increase on top of that. And quite frankly, don't feel bad if you don't. We've had, if you will, college professors who have sat there and just looked at you with as if they're staring,
The deer in the headlights.
deer in the headlight as to what? I said, no, but that's what we're there. We're going to be there to help you try and understand that, and so at least you can make when you go to the polls, you can make a decision knowing what the true impact's going to be.
Yes, and certainly come out, call the town hall. With questions, call me.
Yep.
You will have the budget. If it's not up there yet, it'll be up there very, very shortly, so that you can look through the budget for public hearing. We just have about 30 seconds, so thank you for joining me today. The next show, we're going to talk further about the budget, and hopefully our point is try to fill people in and educate you on what is going on with the town government, the Board of Ed, capital and debt budgets.
Exactly. We want our taxpayers to know as much as they can about this process so they all can make an intelligent decision.
Thank you for joining me. Again, Board of Selectmen meets tonight. The topics continue to talk about the lake, continue to talk about the trails. The budget is a primary focus. Again, both looking at this year and next year. And the next show will continue our discussion on the budget. Thank you to Community Voice Channel for its continued support, and we will see you in 2 weeks.